At 4:47 in the morning, the floor is already alive. Not loud, not chaotic, just awake in a way normal people never are. The screens are glowing before the sun comes up. Futures are bleeding across Europe. Treasury yields keep climbing. Somewhere above the desk, Bloomberg repeats the same sentence over and over, like a warning nobody wants to acknowledge anymore. Emergency liquidity measures. Possible central bank intervention. Unscheduled statement before the opening bell. Nobody looks surprised. That's the part that unsettles you. 3 desks away, a trader is staring at a position that erased an entire month of profit before sunrise. No shouting, no slammed keyboards, just quiet damage control. A risk manager stands behind him with folded arms while numbers keep moving against the book. Nobody asks if he's okay. Because nobody here expects the market to be fair. And slowly you start understanding something people outside Wall Street never really see. This place doesn't reward confidence. It doesn't care who was right last week. The market only respects survival. Everything else is temporary. You sit down at a desk that still feels like it belongs to someone else. Nobody asks for your ideas. Nobody cares where you studied. You are too low in the hierarchy for any of that to matter yet. Your job is simple. Enter orders. Update exposure sheets. Track spreads moving across markets faster than your eyes can comfortably follow. You spend entire mornings adjusting tiny numbers that control millions of dollars you are nowhere near important enough to touch directly. And still, every mistake becomes visible immediately. The senior traders barely speak. The people managing the biggest books speak the least. They don't waste energy predicting headlines. They watch flow instead. A sudden disappearance of buyers. Size moving quietly through dark pools. Futures reacting before the government announcement even hits the terminal. At first you assume somebody has insider information. Then you realize something worse. The market usually moves before the explanation arrives. Financial television spends the entire day telling the public why something happened hours after the capital already repositioned. By the time analysts finish explaining a sell-off, pension funds have already reduced exposure. Prime brokers have already tightened leverage, and institutional money has already moved somewhere safer. You stop watching headlines first. You start watching liquidity. That changes the way you see everything. You begin noticing how traders around you talk. Nobody speaks about certainty. Nobody talks about being right. They talk about positioning, about exits, about where size gets trapped when volatility expands too fast. One senior trader tells another desk to reduce exposure before a central bank speech even begins. Another starts unwinding risk because currency liquidity feels thin. Nobody explains exactly what that means to you. But a few hours later, the market breaks lower anyway. That's when the realization starts settling in. Retail traders study charts. Institutions study pressure. Pressure inside leverage. Pressure inside positioning. Pressure inside capital flows large enough to move entire sectors before the public notices anything changed. You start understanding the invisible hierarchy sitting underneath the market itself. Prime brokers controlling leverage across funds. Pension money quietly shifting trillions every quarter. Sovereign capital leaving currencies long before headlines mention instability. Dark pools absorbing orders that would move entire indices if they ever hit public exchanges openly. The market stops looking random after that. It starts looking organized. Not organized in a conspiracy theory way. Organized in the way power always is. And eventually the desk gives you something dangerous. Risk. Not much, just enough to change the way your heartbeat feels when the market moves against you. Your first book is small compared to the desk's total exposure, but it's large enough to stop feeling abstract. A 2-point move suddenly matters because your name is attached to the position now. You start entering trades more carefully. Your hands slow down. You double-check order sizes before pressing the key. One afternoon, you still make a mistake. A single extra zero. That's all it takes. The order hits the market before you catch it. For a few seconds, nobody says anything. The senior trader next to you looks over without expression while you rush to reverse the position. No anger, no lecture. Somehow that silence feels worse than yelling would have. Because losses can be repaired. Trust usually cannot. After that day, the market follows you home. You start checking orders twice, sometimes 3 times. You wake up in the middle of the night replaying executions in your head. You stop sleeping deeply because some part of your brain remains connected to futures markets moving in another time zone. Then one morning, your phone starts vibrating before sunrise. Asia collapsed overnight after an emergency rate decision triggered forced liquidations across leveraged positions. Futures are locked limit down before New York even opens. By the time you reach the desk, an entire month of profits is gone. Not reduced. Gone. And the worst part is you haven't even placed a trade yet. Risk management calls before the opening bell. Margin requirements increase immediately. Traders across the floor start reducing exposure at the same time, all searching for liquidity that suddenly disappeared overnight. That morning changes something inside you. You realize discipline does not guarantee safety here. The market can take back weeks of progress before you even touch the keyboard. After that, sleep becomes lighter. Europe can hurt your positions before New York wakes up. A central bank speech on the other side of the world can erase months of stability while you're still in bed pretending to rest. But you survive. And on Wall Street, survival gets rewarded faster than brilliance ever does. Which is why they increase your size. Now junior traders start walking toward your desk before they take risk. Not because you became smarter overnight. Because you survived long enough for people to trust your judgment. Your screens change too. Fewer charts, more exposure dashboards, correlations between desks, liquidity pockets, position concentration. You stop asking where the market might go and start asking what happens if everybody needs to leave at the same time. That shift changes the atmosphere around you. Trading no longer feels competitive. It starts feeling political. One trader keeps receiving larger allocations despite mediocre performance. Another survives losses that would have destroyed someone else's career months ago. Certain books stay protected because certain relationships matter more than P&L. Nobody says it openly. But you begin noticing how capital moves inside the firm before it moves inside the market. Wall Street stops looking meritocratic after that. It starts looking territorial. Then volatility explodes after a surprise central bank announcement. Risk management freezes your book in the middle of the move. You cannot enter positions, cannot reduce exposure, cannot defend yourself while the market swings violently around you. You sit there watching prices move while your own risk limits become a cage around the portfolio. That's when you realize reputation has become part of your exposure. A bad trade loses money. A visible mistake reduces future access to capital. And on Wall Street, losing future access is worse. The higher you climb, the less trading actually matters. You stop thinking in positions. You start thinking in systems. Pension money continues flowing into equities, while credit markets quietly weaken underneath them. Prime brokers begin calling about leverage concentration across correlated trades. Liquidity providers widen spreads before panic becomes obvious to the public. Then, one afternoon, the exits disappear. Not slowly. Instantly. The market is still open, prices are still moving, but liquidity vanishes the moment everybody tries reducing exposure at once. Positions that looked safe an hour ago suddenly cannot absorb size without collapsing further. You watch experienced traders fail to get out. Not because they were wrong. Because there is nobody left willing to take the other side. That's the day you finally understand volatility is survivable. Illiquidity is what kills people. After that, your role changes again. You stop managing trades directly. You start managing capital distribution itself. Investors begin calling after weak quarters. Redemption requests increase quietly at first, then faster once financial media starts questioning performance. Sovereign wealth allocations shrink. Institutional clients ask for reassurance using calm language that somehow feels more threatening than panic. Now the danger no longer comes from markets. It comes from capital leaving the system. You hold positions carefully, trying to reduce exposure without triggering the exact collapse you are trying to escape. At this scale, exiting too aggressively becomes its own disaster. And the larger the fund grows, the lonelier the room becomes. Nobody around you speaks honestly anymore. Too much money depends on confidence remaining intact. Conversations become filtered, controlled. Every sentence sounds calculated because one careless comment can trigger withdrawals large enough to create new problems instantly. Eventually, you stop watching markets the way traders do. Teams execute beneath you now. Entire departments monitor volatility, currency stress, geopolitical instability, bond dislocations across countries you may never even visit. The conversations become quieter at this level. Not because less is happening, because the consequences are larger. Markets stop looking like opportunities after a while. They start looking like pressure systems moving capital between institutions, governments, central banks, pension funds, sovereign entities, and balance sheets too large for ordinary people to imagine clearly. And somewhere inside that structure, you realize something almost nobody outside Wall Street understands. The system was never designed to protect participants, only capital itself. By the time you reach the upper layers of Wall Street, something strange happens. The people controlling the most money spend the least amount of time trying to predict the market. Retail traders obsess over charts, entries, breakouts, indicators. They believe success comes from being right more often than everyone else. But institutional finance doesn't work that way. Nobody survives long enough here thinking prediction is enough. The larger the capital becomes, the less important certainty feels. Positioning matters more. Liquidity matters more. Exposure matters more. A retail trader celebrates winning trades. A fund celebrates surviving bad quarters. That difference changes the meaning of the game entirely. Because markets rarely destroy people slowly, most collapses happen all at once. One liquidity event, one leverage squeeze, one overnight repricing violent enough to force exits before recovery becomes possible. So the deeper you move into the system, the more the objective changes. At lower levels, people chase returns. At higher levels, people protect capital flows. And eventually, you understand the uncomfortable truth underneath the entire structure. Every desk, every fund, every risk committee on Wall Street is built around the same thing. Not maximizing gains, containing damage. And this is where most people break psychologically. You arrive believing hard work guarantees survival. Then you watch disciplined traders disappear after a single bad quarter because investors lost confidence faster than performance could recover. You believe intelligence creates advantage. Then you realize average traders with powerful relationships often receive more capital, more protection, and more patience than brilliant traders producing unstable returns. And then the final illusion dies. You believe money creates freedom. But the more capital you manage, the more controlled your life becomes. More oversight, more reporting, more pressure to remain stable, More dependence on investors, counterparties, liquidity conditions, central bank policy, and risk models you cannot fully control, no matter how experienced you become. Eventually, your decisions stop belonging entirely to you.
Too much capital depends on them now.
That is why the people at the top rarely look relaxed. They are no longer protecting themselves. They are protecting structures larger than themselves. And the system only values you for as long as it believes you can preserve capital better than the person waiting behind you. That realization changes the meaning of success completely. The higher you climb, the narrower your room for error becomes. The larger the capital, the smaller your freedom feels. You do not control capital.
Capital controls you.
And one morning, before sunrise, you walk back onto the floor and notice someone new sitting quietly near the edge of the desk. Young, focused, watching every screen like it still feels exciting. He thinks trading is about intelligence, about freedom, about making money before everyone else figures it out. You recognize the illusion immediately because you once believed it too. Around him, the machine keeps moving without pause. Orders pass through futures markets before the opening bell. Risk teams monitor exposure across currencies and rates. Liquidity shifts silently between institutions large enough to move entire sectors without appearing on public screens. Nobody stops to explain any of it to him. They didn't explain it to you either. Because Wall Street never teaches the truth directly. It lets pressure teach it slowly. And eventually, if you survive long enough, you realize the market was never really about money. It was about position inside the structure that decides where money moves next. Subscribe if you want to understand how power actually moves through capital, not how social media pretends it does.